Welcome to an edition of Maple Leafs Postgame Breakdown on Postgame Media, where you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and even the Postgame Media website. You can find every piece of sports content myself and my co-host do. I'm Ryan Pigeau alongside John Lodge, and this ambitious program is all about breaking down the most recent advancements in the Maple Leafs series, we'll call it here. It's the qualifier to try to get into the first round of the NHL playoffs and our return to play here. And John, the last time we talked, it was just earlier in the week. We broke down a little bit of that series. It was just the first game. Not the greatest showing from our boys, and we were a little nervous. I didn't have my head screwed on straight. I was worried. I was worried we are going to get swept any moment here. And we're going to talk about a big hit to the roster as well today after yesterday's game. But that's what we're here to do. We're going to break down another Maple Leaf game and hopefully get to it tomorrow, because there's a Leaf game Thursday and Friday, John. So we'll try to get one in there Thursday night if we can. But we're trying to break down every single game that happens. And man, yesterday's was a blast. I think I want to say before we get started, I'm so glad Korpisalo we cracked it open. We broke the seal, because that guy's the MVP of the series so far in this Columbus-Toronto 5-game mini series that we're having. And he's the reason for our nightmares, is he not?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, the guy's been playing well above his talent level. Now, not saying that he can't keep this up, but from what we've seen previously, and I mean, we haven't been able to see a lot of Korpisalo because he's always played behind Bobrovsky, right? And he's played behind other guys, so you've never really been able to see what he's been able to do. And then even when Elvis Merzlikins came in, he overtook Bobrovsky, right? So, or not Bobrovsky, he took over Korpisalo. So this is really the coming out party for this guy, and it's against one of the highest powered offenses in the league. And for game one, it was a sure defensive showdown by the Columbus Blue Jackets, but also they were out skating and just outpacing the Leafs. The Leafs were overthinking things. It was a strange game in game one.
Trying to be too cute, yeah.
Yeah, well, in game two, it was completely different. In game two, it was the game that it was almost the prototypical perfect game, you would say, for the Toronto Maple Leafs to play, right? Yeah. Like the forwards took over the 15 shots in the first, 14 shots in the second, and I believe 12 shots in the third. Just an outstanding output. I remember some games for the Leafs in the past where they didn't have 15 shots total. So for them to get 15 shots in a game, that's really good, or in a period, sorry, that's really good. And they really were able to keep Columbus down and in their defensive zone the whole time.
Yeah, I remember looking up at the clock mid-game yesterday. And of course, the Leafs pulled off the win. They end up winning 3-0. We should say that before we move on to the nitty-gritty here. They tie the series up 1-1. But I looked up, it was about 9:22 left in the second period. The score is still 0-0, John. The Leafs have tripled Columbus's shots. It's 25-8 to be exact. And again, like, you're sitting here thinking they're not going to get one past Korpisalo. It wasn't until Matthews finally scores late in the second with like a greasy tip. It's not even your classic. I mean, he scored a few this way, but it's not a classic Matthews wrister or a nice play. It's just a greasy tip, and they finally break the seal. But I don't think there's anyone close to Korpisalo right now. If you were to hand out the MVP of the series today, oh my God, he's been amazing. Because game one, you could say, I know, as you said, outpaced and just outperformed by Columbus, but Korpisalo was still able to make the difference. As we said the last time we talked, I was arguing, against a tweet on Twitter, as you find tweets there, Nick D'Souza saying one soft goal was the difference. And I thought, man, when the game was still tied 0-0, Korpisalo robbed Matthews top of the slot. Could have been a 1-0 game. That's a big difference, right? So I think for 2 straight games, he's been the MVP. And I think we've started to see he's wearing down a bit. And that might be good news for the Leafs, knowing that we've got some tough news coming out of camp today.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get into that in a minute, but I still want to talk a little bit more about the game before we get into the aftermath of what happened in the last 2 minutes of play there with Muzz. I find it a little bit of serendipitous, a little ironic that both opening goals for both squads came from the same wing. Right? Like, and it was by the same arm on the goalie, and it was just, it's not that they were identical, but it was like, okay, yeah. So, and then both goalies ended up with a shutout from both those games, and it's kind of like a parallel sort of interesting situation here. Not that Anderson had to stop as many as Korpisalo has, but it was definitely a prove-it game for Freddie in last night's game, and he stepped up when he needed to. Man, he made the big saves when he had to. He didn't have to face. I think he had a total of 24 shots or something he faced, but there were some key saves that he made in there.
I think so. Like I was gonna say props to him for staying sharp, although not really being busy through 45 minutes of play. Like when you really boil it down, there's two late penalties that the Leafs take well in a 2-goal game, and Freddie's kind of maybe got to be a little more classic Freddie when the lanes are wide open like that. But beyond that, for that first 45 minutes of play, it kind of looked like the Leafs were in control of that pace, right? They had the puck all game. They were in the offense all game. They just seemed to really want to play their style of game, and even tying it all back in. Korpisalo was shutting the door a handful of times. There could have been. I mean, you say it a lot. It's cliche in hockey, but it could have been 6-0 early on if it wasn't for Korpisalo standing on his head. I don't know. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, no, the Leafs were definitely dominant offensively. I didn't want Freddie's play to get lost in all of it, right? Because yes, there was a ridiculous amount of shots and a ridiculous amount of offense put up, but Frederik Andersen still did what he had to do to keep the Leafs get the Leafs the win and get them back in the series. Yeah,
You and me both. You and me
I think
both,
we're
brother.
both sick and tired of hearing the nonsense from Leafs Twitter. I kind of jumped on someone on Twitter earlier today, and I had to apologize because I thought he was attacking
Totally.
Freddie, and I was like, yeah. So I had to eat a little bit, but I was more than welcome or more than happy to do it because I realized that he wasn't chirping Freddie. But I will go to bat for Freddie anytime.
We're defensive. We're defensive of our guy, man. We love Freddie. He's a beautician, right? We just keep saying it over and over. He's the superhero of this team. Let's just break the game down real quick. I liked the early hit by Kyle Clifford on Dean Kukin. I think that set the tone. You got guys on Twitter
Did you?
always.
Did you?
Oh, talk about set the tone, man. That's a fourth line. He comes out. They barely played in the first game. I forget what they said the minutes were, but it was minimal. He comes out and absolutely hammers Dean Kukin to the point where you've got people debating whether it was clean or not. They might look at it and say it was a like should have got 2 minutes for charging, but at the same time, I don't think it was. Targeting the head, he kind of came up a bit, but it's shoulder to shoulder. He sets the tone, baby. And I think that's part of what you need out of a fourth line. A guy like Kyle Clifford isn't going to, he's not, he's similar to Zach Hyman where he's going to get into corners and grind or have nice board play. But Kyle Clifford hits and fights, baby. And he set the tone. He did his job early in a playoff game. So I thought that was something I wanted to point out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going to talk about it too because I think I was actually surprised that there was no supplemental discipline on it. I understand it was a great play, but he was, if you look at point of contact, freeze the frame, he was off the ice. He left his feet. He had an upward motion into the guy's body. He had to leave for concussion protocol. There was no penalty on the play. Now, I'm not saying suspend him 5 games. I was just surprised that because
Came
there was
back too.
yeah, well, I know, but I was surprised that because there was no discipline at all, that player safety didn't step in and say, okay, 1 game because you didn't even get a penalty, right? Because that was an illegal hit.
The Leafs constantly are on the short end of that stick too, right? Remember Zach Hyman?
It was an illegal hit. It was an illegal hit.
At this point, man, I got to see more angles to agree with you because I originally, when I saw it, I thought this is great. He goes shoulder to shoulder. So what? This guy took a big hit and he's feeling it. That's what concussion protocol is for. And you never want to see brain injuries. That's why you're trying to work for, a better, what is it? Science, sports science, right? We're trying to develop the sports science so it's safer. But in the end, he comes back to play. There's no penalty on the play. That's why I said I could see the other side of it. I would give him maybe 2 minutes for charging, but it still sets the tone, baby. The Leafs looked like they were ready to play after that.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, they felt like they had the puck.
I screamed, dude. Like I was at the top of my lungs when it happened. I screamed, and then I got up and I was like, he just took his soul. He hit his soul out of his body. Like it was insane, and it just some visceral noise came out of me. I had no control over it.
Well, and again, like it felt like the Leafs after that had the puck and were on the attack for practically the entire game, right? Realistically, 45 minutes I thought was really dominated by them, and we touched on it before. They outshot Columbus in the first 2 periods. It was 15-6 and 14-6 respectively. Like, get out, man. We're talking about a team that came in game 1 looking really sluggish. We had guys like like Marner and Tavares who really like looked invisible, and Matthews being the only one who really wanted to step it up and drive home a goal, the only one who had any offense on his back in that first game. It spread around, right? JT scores that amazing, what I thought was kind of a statement breakaway goal, shutting up somebody like me who was really hard on him, really tough or hard on him the last time we talked. I thought, we can't be making excuses for a guy. We can't be talking this, and this, or his wingers, or I thought it was a statement breakaway, man. Willie hit him up the seam, and he nailed it. So I'm happy to see they come out and they actually perform. But again, that Clifford hit, the way they had that puck right on the attack for the first period and a half, Corpusalo is the only one making any difference here.
Yeah, no, he was definitely keeping the Columbus Blue Jackets in the game last night. After the cliff hit, you had the two goals. Well, I mean, it was after the second period, late in the second period anyway. Let's talk about the second goal though, because we've talked about the Matthews tip. The Tavares breakaway was almost hilarious in how it happened, because every single Columbus Blue Jacket was inside the blue line, deep, probably within the circles, and John Tavares had a breakaway from our blue line out. And most of the time when you have a breakaway for that long, it brain cramp and you screw it up, but not JT, man. He had a point to prove, and he proved it last night.
I want to highlight Travis Dermott on that play too, because it starts with a wicked defensive play. He lays out. I can't say he was, planning to do that, but the last resort type play, lays out on his stomach. He ends up deflecting it to Nylander, who sees Tavares up the middle, and it's a simple tic-tac-toe. Like, it doesn't really start tic-tac-toe because, again, it's kind of a deflection right to him. But again, I just thought the way Tavares buried it too, it was like, yes, we're back, baby. We're up 2-0. That was a statement, just a huge goal, and we're playing our goal song, and we love the sound of that, right? So it was awesome to see. And I think moving on from that, the Tavares Nylander second line did seem to work better than the Tavares Marner second line. However, whatever chemistry it is, or if you want to split the atom and try to give me a super hot take on why, I just think the Matthews first line, as it's been before when his line mates were Hyman and Janssen, or Hyman and Nylander, or whoever it is, he just seems to go with whoever's ready to go that night. But Tavares switching him with Nylander, did you think that was a bit of a better second line as well? And could you see that keeping up? Or
all right, yeah, Ryan. My thoughts on that is it's funny because where I was going to go with it is Tavares not a little bit lazy when he has Marner on his line? Is that just me?
I don't know what you mean by lazy.
I just mean reliant on Marner's flash and reliant on the line to not just to drive the line, but to pull the forwards and the defense away from Tavares, so that Tavares can away from Tavares, so he can sneak in to the holes. And then when he is on a line with Nylander, it's like he drives the line. He's engaged more almost. And I don't know, I'm not saying that Tavares makes the outward decision to be lazy on a line with Marner. It's just when you rely on one person to do what they're supposed to do, sometimes you don't do what you've been known and what you've made your name to do through the years, right? And Tavares has always elevated the people around him in the line that he's on. Just look at his years in the island, right?
Right.
So maybe now this is why this line is working better. He's elevating Nylander, he's elevating Mikheyev, as opposed to relying on Marner to do what he needs to do. Tavares is driving the line and elevating his line mates.
Yeah, you could have a point there. I wasn't even thinking that deeply on it. I just thought the production, the way they looked, the speed, the flash, it was the overall, full team package. But I heard Hayes touch on it today on Overdrive. The Leafs' blueprint for the longest time since they signed Tavares has been just like the Penguins, just like the Oilers have finally developed, is that 1-2 center punch that on any given night, if they're both rolling, you're going to have a really tough time. Now, as a sidetrack, Columbus with the deep pairings and their defensive capabilities might be one of the few teams that can stymie it on a night. We might have seen that game one. But the Leafs blueprint is having that 1-2 center punch. So I'd hate to think that Tavares is lazy. I know on the last podcast, like I said, I was kind of hard on him, thinking like we can't be making excuses for the guy. But I think maybe a lot of it does have to do with Marner and his age and maturity and his willingness to go every night. And if the play style, when those two are together, kind of dictates Marner needing to be consistent, maybe when there is nights off, it kind of shows more on Tavares because he's having to do extra work. The centerman is the guy that's got to go in all four corners of the ice, right? That's the only two guys out there that have
I
to
am
do.
sick of that. Can I just stop you there? We need to move on from that because Mitch Marner spends as much time in the corners as any center on this ice, and
Well,
he's a winger.
I'll
And
stop
so
you.
we should go with forward one, forward two, and forward three, D1, D2 per
Sure.
line.
Sure, I'll stop you there and say this is a night that Mitch Marner's got to be going then, because I'm talking
Yes,
consistently every night.
yes, 100%. I get that.
That's why he didn't make it as a center in the NHL.
Well, I mean, his size too, right? Like you don't want him on the draw, but my point is as much as he's not taking faceoffs, he does get into the corners and dig the puck out as much as any center on the Leafs does.
And yet
Maybe
he's
not 34,
yeah,
but
he still needs a Zach Hyman or Mikheyev on his line. So I think he's not too good at that. I think he needs a great center and a good tough winger to do that for him as well. I think what Mitch Marner's good at is his creativity, his slippiness, his ability to slink away and again be aggressive when necessary. Right? We've seen him on a penalty kill. We've seen him try to maybe body a guy, but Mitch Marner's a little fragile out there. So I think again the whole what point am I trying to make about the centerman working harder? Again, this Tavares, if he's going to be lazy, he can't be relying on a young person or two young people. He's the mature guy, right? So I think maybe the centerman's constantly going to be showing a little bit more of that rust when the line itself isn't clicking, right? The centerman's always working a little bit harder in every corner. It's a given if you play hockey. It really is.
I
But
feel like I'm going to get heat for saying Tavares was lazy.
yeah, but I think I'm trying to talk people off the ledge with, you know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to get down your throat. I'm trying to say if he is lazy, I doubt it's him that's being lazy. I think it's the rest of the line, and it's always going to show more on a center than it's going to show on the wingers, because the center is going to be defensively aware, making those adjustments when the wingers aren't committing, when the wingers aren't on it every night, when they aren't consistent. The centerman is going to be showing it every night because he's the third defense as much as he's the third forward, right? Like, you can tell me how a back check, may work or may not, but I think the center is going to have to always be committed no matter what. So I think with Marner, I maybe him being on Matthews' line, it's more like that comparison with Johnson and Hyman before, where when Matthews going, as long as everybody else on his line is good, he's good. He's still going to skate that puck up the ice and nobody's going to touch it. Lately, I find when he tries that, he's been getting bodied a bit, but it all depends on who you're with. So I think earlier on, my point I'm trying to make is Tavares Nylander as a second line. Simple. It was a simple adjustment that the last coach wouldn't make. Just okay, it didn't work in game one. We move on to game two, and here we are sitting with a win. We've got a much more energized team. So I personally think Tavares and Nylander will go forward as that pairing until we maybe see them falter again. But to me, what just stood out more so than even the names is the idea of a coach saying after one game, I'm going to make an adjustment, and it seemed to work. It was right on.
Yeah, it's almost Bruins like, right? Almost like how Bruce Cassidy used
Cassidy
to do it
style.
to the Leafs year after year. I mean, I don't want to get heat for calling them lazy. I'll say reliant, whatever you
Yeah,
want to say. It's just freshness, and freshness always helps, right? And it obviously helped last night, and so we'll probably see the same lines coming out on Thursday night, and hopefully Marner and Matthews can go out there and have a little bit of fun. Maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe that's what you need to get Marner engaged.
yeah,
Not that you'd have to think that you need to get somebody engaged for a playoff game, but when it's your everyday life, it kind of sometimes, and I get what we're talking about.
I
Oh,
get
hockey
that.
just came back. It's still their everyday life, right?
Yep,
So you
still
still
their
need
job.
something to get them going, get them up, to get them to do the best they can possibly do, as opposed to putting it in autopilot, right? So.
Here's one final point to tie it all in, because Torts, he said something I don't necessarily agree. He said the Blue Jackets sucked, and I thought they played kind of a similar game to the one before. I didn't think it was much different because, as we've touched on, Korpisalo bailed them out just as much in game one, or maybe close to as much, maybe not the same. But Toronto seemed to finally play up to their capabilities, right? Their speed, their offense, their creativity. It was all there yesterday. But my one huge question, John, is the constant question surrounding these teams. Can they bring that same intensity the very next game? They've been that great. That's been their problem for a while, right? They've been that great team for 2 nights, 3 nights, and then they'll fade, and they'll really fade. Or it could be one night after the next, you don't know what you're getting. But let's call a spade a spade. That inconsistency conversation it's been their kryptonite. Like, it really has. So no matter what we sit here and debate about, whether Tavares and Nylander, whether who's a guy's lazy or not, it doesn't even matter. If the younger guys, the ones we know have to step up every night that are getting paid, if they don't show it, like you said, if they don't give themselves a reason to get pumped up for a playoff game, And we're going to see the same thing we've seen all season long and in the last 2 or 3, just the growing pains. There will be pain. There will be pain. So that's the one weary, if you're a weary traveler, I'd give you that advice.
So, game one, can you just remind me what the score of game one was?
I only consider it 1-0. There was an empty
So,
netter there.
so that's what I consider it. And so game two, Freddie let in 0 goals.
Yep.
The way and this is going, bear with me a second here.
I'm bearing.
The way the Raptors win championships and become a dominant team is by playing proper defense and bearing down when the time is right. And to me, that is the best consistency to have. As much as the Toronto Maple Leafs in game one did not have their offensive consistency, they had their defensive consistency. Columbus only scored 1 goal, and it was on a BS. Freddie even said it. He misread the shot. He lifted his arm and he gave him the spot.
The Cam
So
Atkinson goal. Yeah.
you're talking about consistency. Well, I think that the Leafs have been defensively consistent, and that's where the worry is now headed into game 3 because of the obvious loss that we had late in the game.
No, I couldn't agree more. That's the one thing defensively this team has really sucked. Much more than they've been inconsistent, they've just cannot play D. So the way I liked really Justin Hall, because he's gonna have to play tons more minutes here now. We're gonna talk about it in a second, but the way he looked the other night, he's bodying guys. He's actually giving there's not many Leafs that'll do it, right? Like Morgan Riley, Justin Hall, and unfortunately Jake Muzzin, who we're losing. Those are the only 3 guys that I can really consider, physical. And at this point, they're able to shut down a team like Columbus. Columbus isn't super small. Like they're missing Josh Anderson, so they're missing a little bit of firepower. Could you imagine that barreling down the wing, checking on us, one of these small D? Like that could be an issue. But in the end, I think if they've been defensively consistent like this, they can keep just grinding away.
They do have to grind away now because they've lost Muzzin, and let's just talk about the Muzzin situation here. We lost our number one defenseman, our number one shutdown defenseman anyway, in Jake Muzzin last night on a play that I will call a series of unfortunate events. I was saying that to my family when I watched it live. I was like, listen, was the check that in the back technically illegal? Yes, it technically was a cross check, but it wasn't that hurt Muzzin. It was the slide into the boards, and then he went neck first into Bjorkstrand's knee, the back of his knee and thigh, and that's what caused that's what caused the stinger, right? Now, I seen him go down, and the second I seen the trainer reach for his neck, Ryan, I knew it was like 5 minutes before they even said they were bringing the stretcher. I knew the second he reached for it, the trainer was touching his neck, that he was not getting off that ice, and we were losing Jake Muzzin. Now, unfortunately, we have lost him for the series, but it's not a serious injury, so we have that.
Thank God. We all thought he was just going to get up, and that's the thing. Until you started to see those, when he got up and he laid
right when he was doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
This with his hands, I was like, oh, something's wrong with that neck.
Yeah, but initially it's like, okay, he's gonna get up, he's fine. He's just kind of, and Mike Milbury took a little bit of heat for it. Like, I understand what he was trying to say. He just kind of misworded it, as we do in broadcasting all the time. But he kind of said, like, it's hard to tell initially if he's just trying. I'm paraphrasing. If he's just trying to kind of take a moment, take a breather, and hold it for a second. And sometimes that happens, right? I saw Oliver Ekman-Larsson in a game today take a high hit from Austin Watson, went down, and played it as if he was like completely dead, and then he kind of got up and skated away. And I'm thinking, man, he really acted as if that one was going to kill him there. So Muzzin's tougher than that. He doesn't sell things, but I wondered if maybe when he was down there, you thought, okay, he's just going to get up. He's just chilling. He's chilling. He's taking a breather. He's been out there for a while. Like, there was so many things going through my head. The last thing I thought of was, oh my God, they're going to have to bring out the stretcher. But you're right. It hit a point where you see him do that second motion. You're going, all right, we have a serious problem. So I don't think I have an issue with the Dubois cross-check. I don't think it's suspension worthy either. Although it's one that we see let go all the time, it's also one that we see get called. So ultimately, I'm indifferent. Like, you could have given him a cross-check penalty, and you could have thrown him out. The way the NHL and suspensions and everything works nowadays, it's so hard to call, right? So I'm indifferent on it. I was really more focused on Muzzin as soon as we realized, oh my gosh, this is more serious than just a simple needs a breather, and he's getting up in a sack. So he's done for the series. You said it. But unfortunately, it's Marincin. I wanted to see Sandin come in. I get why Marincin's coming in. He's a penalty killer in the AHL. When he comes up and plays in Toronto, that's his specialty. He's a penalty killer. So they're going to be using him a lot. And that's why I wanted Sandin in, because the last time, like every time you see Marincin on the ice, we cringe, right? It's the last thing we need to see.
Well, I mean, Marty, he wasn't too bad in his last stint with the Leafs, but yeah, he's made some of those Jake Gardner-esque errors where you just shake your head, you face palm, and you wonder why number 52 is out there at all. My question, Ryan, is why not go 7D and I believe 11 forwards and just completely dismantle that fourth line, have Kyle Clifford and I don't know who else is Jason Spezza who is on the wing, have those two guys as floating wingers, have have Matthews double shift with those two guys on his wings, or how bad is it going to be to have Kyle Clifford on Austin Matthews' wing? Cliff can skate, man.
You know why that's not crazy? It's not crazy because you look at the minutes that line played in the first game. And Pierre Engvall came in yesterday and wasn't super noticeable. I'm not saying he had a bad game, but he didn't make the biggest impact. Clifford, as we mentioned, I thought he had a great impact. But then after that, he's not always the most impactful player. So I could see with the amount of minutes they've been giving Matthews, I think the first game, he had over 16 or 17, something like that. It was a large number compared to what he'd had in previous stints in the playoffs. And don't forget, like, this is Sheldon Keefe's first Maple Leaf playoff appearance, right? Like, again, those that one game and a tweak, and all of a sudden we got a new team. Like, that was Sheldon Keefe sitting here thinking, I got to make a change, instead of thinking he knows everything, right? So we almost have to give this guy some time to feel out his roster. He knows the guys, but this is a new situation for Keefe in the playoffs. But I can see what you're saying. Break that fourth line up because they didn't really play much in the first game, and in the second game they weren't super impactful. And have just a load of D, just to really.
That's it.
Again,
Bring Sandin and Marincin in. Bring them both in because, one, you're bringing Marincin in, and as much as you might not look at him and say, hey, you're taking Jake Muzzin's spot, guess what? He's taking Jake Muzzin's spot, and that comes with a lot of pressure. So if you bring them both in, then you can separate the load of your number one shutdown defenseman on two guys. You have Sandin in half the time. You have Marincin in on the other half the time. Have Sandin come in the offensive zone and have Marincin start in the defensive zone. If he is a better defenseman.
I like your thinking. That's good strategy there, right? Because I will say it, I can't believe he's still on this team. And the one thing is we constantly give him that little bit of rope. Like, you're not wrong. He doesn't look terrible, and then he looks awful, and then he looks completely right. Like, Marincin's always got that little bit of rope, and then he just ruins it. And I hate the idea of us going into game 3. It's a 1-1 scenario. I know we just lost Muzzin, and we got Martin Marincin to replace him. It's like, oh man, does that ever scream? Just I don't want to see that again. But we're gonna have to put up with it, and maybe he surprises us. Maybe he takes that little bit of rope and doesn't do much with it yet. But it'll be game 4, game 5 that it catches up. I promise you. That guy, he's a problem. He really is. I hate to be so mean to a guy, but we know Marincin by now, dude.
And
we've had him in this organization long enough to understand. Like, we know exactly what he is, and we don't want to see him out there more than 6 minutes, 7 minutes. That's the max. I gotta see him out there. Oh.
Well, you know who you're not going to see?
Like a fourth liner. Who's that?
Boston.
Did they just get crushed again?
They just lost, and they will no longer be the number 1 seed.
Yeah, there's no way they are. They just lost 3 straight, including the exhibition.
Well, they said it in the broadcast today. If Boston lost today, that they would be out of the running for the number 1 seed. So now, are they not the most salty team in the entire league, as the team who worked their asses off all year long to be the number 1 seed, only to lose it in some rinky-dink round-robin tournament because they weren't ready to go?
You said it the last time we talked. You think they are going to be ready eventually. So maybe this is just another thorn in their side. They're going to be a cranky team. Maybe look out for them in the first round. You're sticking to that take, and it's looking better and better day by day. Back to the Leafs here too. Just the last point I wanted to make. They did get away with having to kill those back-to-back penalties, right? Silly penalties late in the third. It's a 2-goal game, and it easily could have changed the course of things. So we could have been sitting here today going, oh my God, they pulled the leafiest Leaf thing of all time. They were up 2 with 3.5 minutes to go, and they took all those penalties. They let Columbus tie it up, and they lost in overtime, right? Like, I could have seen that happening. So I'm still weary. You got to make sure that defensive consistency still needs to be there. they were able to shut it down. As long as you limit it to the last 5 or 10 minutes of a game and you have a big enough lead, like I feel like that's Kyle Dubas's mentality. Just outscore the opponent and let those consistencies kind of fly by the seat of the pants. Sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. Last night they were able, or yesterday they were able to do it. But I'm weary of the future when you have to kill those back-to-back penalties late. It makes you nervous.
Yeah, well, you never want to take late penalties, especially when you're up two going into the final 5 minutes of the game. I think the final 2 minutes after the Muzzin thing was non-competitive hockey almost
Yeah.
because no one really had their heads in it as much as Columbus would have wanted to score 2 goals in 2 minutes. I don't think that they had the competitive drive to do it. And then Werenski came out afterwards. The first thing he said was thoughts and prayers to Jake Muzzin because he's had his own serious injuries before. And yeah, the Leafs on the penalty kill doing a great job. Actually, both teams on the penalty kill did a great job, really. The special teams, both teams have to work on one side, but the other side, like I said, defensive consistency, right? So it's going to be interesting to see where the Leafs come out of this one without Muzzin and how much of a change we have, who plays with Hall, who takes the shutdown minutes. There are a lot of questions to be answered. Do we finally see a Riley Hall pairing?
Oh, you'd be loving that, Riley Hall. Riley Hall. Hey, again, as long as Hall doesn't get played too much outside of it, is he going to grow into an elite defenseman in front of our eyes? I
Oh
doubt it.
man, I've
I
been
doubt it.
loving I've been
I
loving on it.
I doubt it, but let's go, man. If he can fill in, that's how you win championships. Guys like Hall step in, play with a guy like Riley for the small amount of time he needs to. If it's just the rest of this series, whatever it may be, because we just need to be. I'm always afraid of giving guys too much credit and then turning around and having to hate on them the next game when we've expected them to be so much better than they are, right? So, I feel like that goes to show you how much I like Justin Hall. Every time I see him play, I'm like, look at you, man. Oh my God, separating guys. You're quick on your feet. You're making a great breakout pass. He plays John like a top four defenseman every time I look at him on the ice. Okay, he's not being paid like one yet, and the moment he gets paid like one, we're gonna hate Justin Hall. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I
It's just
mean,
I understand how this market works, and I hate it.
I don't know if that's going to be the case, but and I don't think he'll ever turn into a top two defenseman, but he
Oh
sure as
no,
hell can turn into Mark Mathot,
there you
who can
go.
be the guy
Yeah,
to be with the top defenseman, right? And
yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Big body. He is a right hand shot. He would be the perfect pair with Riley if he could turn into that defensive shutdown grizzly guy, separating bodies from pucks and everything that he needs to be, using his size the way he needs to.
He's
Then
young.
Riley can take the puck and do whatever he wants to do with it, right?
I
I'm
believe
not
he's
saying
27 or 28 years old too. Like John, there's still time. There's still time for him to
tons
turn
of
into
time.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's already looking like this now, like you're not doing anything to convince me otherwise. I believe you're on the right track. I'm just so afraid of growing up in this market the way that we've appreciated nothing around here, right? Like Jake Gardner's a great hockey player, and what happened to him? It's like Justin Hall is the next one to make that same amount of money and slot in and not be appreciated for what he's really worth and make too much some days and play great others. Oh, I'm
Jake
afraid.
Gardner's going to the first round.
I know. Hey, we got to be afraid. We'll save that for another time because it's already almost 7 o'clock.
Yeah, no. I was just gonna say, before we get out of here, I always think back to before Keefe was the head coach of the Leafs. He was on, I believe it was Leafs Lunch or it was Overdrive, and he was asked, "Who is the one player on the Leafs or on the Marlies that nobody is talking about?" And 2 years ago, he said Justin Hall.
Perfect. That's all I needed to hear. Like I
Sheldon
said,
Keefe's team.
please don't pay him $6 million a year. Just don't do it. Don't pay him 5.5. Like I love the fact that he's getting paid, but he's getting paid. What's your keys to next game? I've got one. I've only got one key to next game.
I think I've said it, man. Defensive consistency. The offense figures itself out. You've got the big guns, and they've showed that they could do it. They know they can do it now. They've got the confidence from beating Corpusalo. So, yeah, defensive consistency. Take care of your house, and everything else will take care of itself.
I like it. It almost ties in with mine because they were so defensively consistent in one 60-minute game. Mine is replicate that performance. Like now that we know Corpusalo can be scored on, man, it's your series. Just pretend Muzzin's in the game. Let those guys step up. As we said, let Hall step up. Let Marinson play his minutes. Oh my God, I can't get that out of my mouth without laughing. And have those big two, those first and second line center carry their wingers. And let's see what happens because again, Korpisalo can get scored. I think he's almost overdue. Like it burned out is what I'm trying to say. I think it's done.
I
That
think it
gas
almost
can's
happened
almost on
last
empty.
night.
Yeah. So replicate that performance. That's my only key to next game, and we'll see what happens, boys. All right, buddy. They're on at 8:00 tomorrow night. Are you ready? I'm pumped.
Oh, I'm so ready. I'm ready for the Raps tonight, man. I agree with Sid Sixero more times than not. Now in the strange 2020 era we live in, he said that he loves the staggered schedule, and so do I, man. I can't get there's so much sports that there's never nothing on, and I'm loving it. I don't even watch it all, but I know that anytime I want to sit down on the couch, I can catch a game somewhere somehow. And we have to figure out how to keep this, at least with hockey. And we'll get into that on the next pod, how I think it's possible.
Bit of a teaser. I like it. Okay, John, take care, buddy. We'll talk tomorrow.
Later.
Have a good one. See you, everybody.